Have you ever thought about what it means to slander someone? Welcome to this week's devotional. Glad that you joined me. So often as we look at life and just this world in general, it seems that at every turn, there is some way that someone is slandering someone else. Now, we forget that the whole concept of slander does not mean that we have to use our words. We can be using our actions, we can be using even written methods. Or it seems like the newest way to slander someone is by putting him in certain light in communities of faith, which even with talking about that, we start getting onto dangerous ground when we open those doors. God throughout the scriptures reminds us that when it comes to slander, that's an area that we should not be treading on, period. And if we are treading on it, we better be very careful with what we're doing and what we're saying to each other and about each other, because he does not take slander lightly. And even look at the very fact of the Ten Commandments themselves. So often as we look at that, we look at it almost more like 10 suggestions instead of 10 things that were written by his finger on stone. Now, anything that was grafted in stone back in ancient times meant that it lasted forever. There was a legacy that was bound to it, and it was something that needed to be followed. Now, when God does something, when he writes with his very own finger, not just on anything, but on stone itself, he's saying that this is a character item that is very important. One of the very commandments themselves, as we look at it, it specifically states, do not lie, or you shall not lie. Now, even in that, we're talking about not slandering someone, not taking something that is not ours, but even more, don't place yourself into a position that you should not be in to start with. Now, God did not give us authority or control over other people's lives. Now, we could say that and say, hey, that's great, this is done. No, we can't stop there. We forget that God did not say that we had control of our own lives, but yet we still destroy ourselves. And even more, when was the last time we thought about the very fact that we slander ourselves more than we do other people? And God reminds us, remember that as you talk about each other, even more as you talk about yourself, you are created in the very image of God. In that image, by words, is separated from us because of what we decide to do. It's important that we remember continually we need to be building each other up by our words, by our deeds, by our methods, so that as others see us, they're continually seeing Jesus. Easier said than done, but remember, Jesus never promised that things would be easy. I like how someone put it to me more recently. Jesus did remind us that life is going to be like a bed of roses. However, we forget the thorns that are with the roses. There's going to be hard times, but God does promise blessings. He's going to see us through. Speaking of this week's devotional verse comes to us from Psalms 101, looking at verse 5, where it says this: whoever secretly slanders his neighbor, him I will destroy. No one who has a haughty look and an arrogant heart will I endure. There's only so much that God will endure, only so much that he will do. Other scriptures remind us that what is done in secret will be brought out into the light. We need to remember that it's not just God is watching. There's others that are watching us to see how we're reflecting him. What are we doing both in secret and in public to continue to reflect the love, the grace, and the majesty of Jesus himself. Let's go out. Let's show people a different way, not just of doing, but ultimately of living and keeping true to who he is and who he's called us to be. Thank you again for joining me, and look forward to seeing you next time as we continue to study God's Word together. God bless.